Welcome all. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming a distinguished leader in global cancer research, Dr. Denis Lacombe. Dr. Denis is the Chief Executive Officer of the European Organization for Research and Treatment of Cancer, EORTC, Europe's flagship institution for independent, patient-centered clinical research. As a medical doctor, trained in Marseille with postdoctoral work at Roswell Park in the US, Dr. Denis has spent more than 3 decades at EORTC. You heard me right, 3 decades. First as a research fellow, then as director of its headquarters, and then Director General since 2021 as CEO. This conversation is especially meaningful for me, as in April 2021, I joined EORTC as honorary president, believing deeply in its mission to expand access, including for patients in the Middle East. That commitment to equity and access is one that both of us share strongly, and which truly underpins today's dialogue. Under Dr. Denis' leadership, EORTC continues to champion independent research that asks the critical questions industry does not always address, from survivorship to quality of life, and EORTC continues to shape the future of clinical research in Europe and beyond. It is an absolute honor to welcome you today, Dr. Denis, to discuss why independent research matters and to talk about the next 5 years ahead and how global collaboration can transform cancer care. Dr. Denis, welcome to Global Health Dialogues.
Thank you, Princess Dina. It's really an honor today to be in conversation with you about cancer.
Thank you. First of all, Dr. Denis, I cannot believe that you have been with EORTC for 30 years. I mean, the enthusiasm that you still sustain after 30 years is beyond what is possible. It's as if every day you're so excited and so enthusiastic, as if you've just started the work yesterday. And really that shows how passionate you are in this role. Dr. Denis, for listeners who may not be familiar, can you briefly just give me a little background on EORTC and the unique role it plays in cancer research? And also explain in layman terms what clinical trials are, just clinical trials. What are they and why are they important? Please give us a little bit of information about that.
So shortly about the EORTC. EORTC is a not-for-profit cancer clinical research. We run clinical trial. We come to that in 2 minutes. And basically, EORTC is a network of doctors, all specialists in oncology, who together try to ask what are the critical questions to answer to push forward the standard of care. And to achieve this therapeutic progress, we do that through clinical trials. And clinical trials aim basically at identifying a question, putting this question into a clinical research protocol based on, as you can understand, a number of regulation, a number of safety parameters, so that we can address this question directly in patients. So it's clinical research in patients. And we hope, through the conduct of the clinical trial, to get robust and definitive answer on a question that will change the treatment of cancer patients.
Okay, give me an example. For example, a question of some kind of treatment.
So, for instance, let's imagine that we have currently a current standard to treat cancer patient, and we can take an example, for instance, breast cancer patient or brain tumor patient, and we have a new treatment. We have a new drug, or we have a new modality, radiation oncology, that we want to test. We are going to, for instance, compare patients treated by the current standard of care versus the new modality. And we hope to demonstrate that the new modality does better than the current modality. And this way, step by step, we hope to improve the survival, the quality of life of the cancer patient. And this is through a succession of clinical trials that indeed the community has pushed forward this standard of care, improving on quality of life and survival.
And EORTC, basically, it's a network of doctors for the whole of Europe, correct?
So certainly, but EORTC is even beyond Europe. So we have a large network of doctors working together. We are currently active actually in 40 countries. And also we collaborate globally because cancer has no borders.
Yes.
And
yes.
when we have very difficult challenges, or when, for instance, we are addressing rare cancers or ultra rare cancer, sometimes Europe is not big enough. So
yes.
we are going to collaborate with colleagues in North America, in,
yes.
in Australia, in the Middle East. We have recently opened a partnership in the Middle East because indeed all patients need therapeutic progress. And if we do it together, we will be faster. And if we do it together, more patients will benefit.
Dr. Denis, I just want to reiterate the importance of clinical trials. From what you said, clinical trials, they confirm the efficacy of standard of care, and they confirm the efficacy of future care, different modalities, different drugs. And clinical trials have really been the tools that have moved cancer care forward to make it more impactful and less toxic and gives better quality of life. Thank you very much for explaining that. Independent clinical research may not grab the headlines like industry-led clinical trials, but it plays a vital role in ensuring that patients receive treatments that are not only innovative, but also truly effective and equitable across health systems. Please, Dr. Denis, help us understand why independent clinical research matters and how it differs from the type of research that industry typically leads.
So, very important question, Princess Dina. Indeed, this research are complementary. It's important, of course, to have access to new drugs, but once new drugs are on the market, we need to understand how to optimally use them. For instance, think about elderly patients who do not enter necessarily in drug development trial. Think about rare cancers. Think about that how we are going to combine an anti-cancer agent with radiation oncology. Think about, for instance, how we can sequence this new drug with other treatments, how we are going to combine. So all these are questions that the independent clinical research is going to take forward to complement the development of new agents.
Yeah, and so basically what you're telling us is that perhaps the industry, let's say pharma, is only focusing on its drug, right? Or maybe the radiotherapy diagnostic companies only focusing on that. So what you're telling us, independent research like the one EORTC conducts, it looks at the full picture, all the treatment protocols working together to see the full outcome, right? And I want to reiterate to our readers, to our listeners as well, that people like EORTC, they are the ones, because they are not-for-profit organizations, they are the ones who are going to look at rare cancers, for example. You know, we've heard that there are many cancers that nobody wants to tackle because there isn't enough volume. And so what about the people who are suffering from those rare cancers? For an organization like EORTC, is because it's an NGO, it's the one who's going to look at that, right? Also, Dr. Denis, tell us about the clinical trials where you de-escalate care. Give us an example of that.
Yes, so indeed, independent clinical research matters for patients because we are addressing quality of life. You know that EORTC is worldwide leader of quality of life research, and we know that often we overtreat patients. We don't know optimally who benefits. Do we have the right dose? And we realize that potentially we can treat patients with less treatment so that we can offer them with, of course, equal activity, with equal efficacy, treatment which are less aggressive, that reduce toxicity and improve quality of life. And of course, you realize that this type of de-escalation clinical trial are typically run by independent organizations like EORTC. There is no incentive for, of course, commercial organization to do this trial, but this is in the heart of our mission.
Yes. And I think this means a lot to me personally as a mother of a cancer survivor. I know for sure, the protocol that probably my son had in 1997, and he also underwent a bone marrow transplant for ALL leukemia in 1997. I am sure now, thanks to clinical trials led by EORTC and others, I'm sure now they were able to de-escalate the toxicity. I am sure now patients being treated for ALL leukemia, they can still manage to cure ALL leukemia, but without having to drown the body with all these toxins. So this makes a lot of sense to me. And it is very important. And like you said, for-profit companies, that's not their mission to do that. They'd rather sell more amounts, more volume of drugs. So we need people like EORTC to have this kind of independent angle that only looks to what's best for the patient in its entirety. Have you ever, EORTC, I know it's a very difficult balance, right? To balance your work, working with pharma, diagnostic companies, and other people in the landscape. What happens if you, for example, you say that a certain new drug is not good enough or it's not achieving what a certain company says it will? Do you actually say no and you write it down and say, no, we don't believe that this certain drug extends life, for example, for 2 years plus, or it achieves its vision?
So EORTC has 4 principles. We drive the protocol, so we develop the protocol. We conduct the data, so all the data process, the statistical analysis, and we publish the results. This is never negotiable. All clinical trials of the EORTC are published, and that is part of our partnership with the commercial sector, so that there is absolutely no ambiguity. So EORTC will publish all results, whether positive or whether negative, because a negative trial is as important, almost, as a positive trial. Of course, we prefer to have positive results because a negative result is very important because it informs the community not to reproduce.
Yes. And yes, exactly. And it, in a way, it by omission helps redirect research efforts elsewhere. So every information, I suppose it's very important, positive or negative. EORTC, you always say that you include patient voices from trial design to real-world follow-up. Give me real examples. What does that really mean? How does it work?
So I will give you an example, and I will take your actually what you have asked about de-escalation clinical trial. When we design a trial to de-escalate treatment, this means that we are going to say to patients, we are going to give you less, and potentially we are a little bit going to compromise on the efficacy for the gain of less toxicity and improved quality of life. So we need to discuss with patients about what is the acceptable risk-benefit ratio that they will accept. Who are we to decide for the patients? And this type of trial, which are extremely, of course, important and challenging to design, we cannot do without the patient. So now EORTC works with patient organization in order to design optimally, for instance, this type of trial. But it's, of course, there are many other ways with which we partner with patients, but I wanted to specifically highlight this one.
But this is also scary, Dr. Denis. I mean, if I was sitting with you, let's say with my son, and you tell me, you know what, we're going to try to de-escalate, how is the patient able to take such a big decision? Especially if, for example, maybe de-escalation doesn't work. Do you usually take up patients who have already tried all other protocols?
So it depends on the clinical situation, and of course there are safety looks. So these trials are not conducted at once, where basically we enter a large number of patients waiting for the outcome. These trials are very closely monitored, so that of course we go in the right direction. We have, for instance, the role of what we call independent data monitoring committee. We look at the data in a very independent manner. So again, there are protocols that surround this research, which are of course extremely strict.
Well, that's a really good explanation. It's all very complex and critical, everything that you do, but very important. One of the reasons I joined EORTC, remember when you called me and we connected, and you said, Princess Dina, I would like you to be the honorary president of our organization. I had just finished my term as president of the Union for International Cancer Control. I asked you one question, if you recall. I said, but Dr. Denis, it's a European organization. You're mainly working with Europe, offering clinical trials. We in the Middle East, our patients don't have access to your life-saving clinical trials. Remember, we had that conversation. And then you told me that you were already testing, you had already started testing in 2022 with the King Hussein Cancer Center in Jordan to establish a Middle East coordination office, calling it MECO, and to see how you can open up access beyond Europe and really, work more deeply outside of Europe. And that was when you convinced me to join you, because I had at that time realized that truly low and middle income countries, we were truly out of this whole clinical trial space. I mean, knowing that certain clinical trials can save lives, right? And they become the standard of care, that many patients in Europe, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, they have that chance after they tried other treatments. Just to think the fact that we never had that access unless we travel abroad, etc., it was driving me crazy, so to speak. So knowing that you were ready to open up access, I quickly jumped on the bandwagon. I said, great, I'm going to join you and I will support you in that. Tell me more, now, once we started working together with the MECO office, and then we started together the PCAN initiative, which is the partnership with EORTC for Clinical Cancer Research Capacity in Arab Countries, networking. It's a big name. Thank God you have an abbreviation called PCAN. You came up with the name, Dr. Denis. Can you tell us what's the aim of this partnership? Where are we doing it? Tell our audience and what we all hope to achieve.
Yes, but first I would like to have really a word of recognition for the King Hussein Cancer Center. Indeed, when we get to know each other, we were already in partnership with the KHCC, and I must say that we have been impressed by several aspects. First of all, the quality of care, the quality of the training of the of the healthcare providers, and for us it was no-brainer. When we met them, we had to go there. We had to partnership with them, and it's been a success story. we have done extremely important clinical trial with KHCC. And it was, of course, rapidly we came on in the discussion that we should go beyond. And now with the Middle East Coordinating Office, the objective is really to support the region in connecting across the region between important cancer centers, trying to build the bridges, bring our knowledge in terms of methodology of clinical trial, and support the region, support the doctors, support the patients in accessing to EORTC clinical trials in the first place, but hopefully, of course, that the region could develop its own autonomy to do their clinical trials themselves, because, of course, there are questions we can take together, but maybe there are questions which are very specific to the region, and hopefully with the knowledge the region will develop, they will be able, of course, to rapidly to take off and deploy their capacities for their patients. And I think this is the objective. It's a win-win. It's a win-win for EORTC. It's a win-win for the centers. But at the end of the day, the winner is the patient, and that's what we want to achieve.
Yes, and I think, and I know that EORTC you offer, like you said, this fantastic new partnership in the Middle East. It's like you said, people will strengthen their relationship together with all these institutions. It's gonna transform clinical research capacity in the region, right? And also you offer fellowship, you offer trainings, you offer all kinds of access to your very expert conferences and so on. And it really was very much needed. And I like the fact that eventually, once this coalition becomes stronger and stronger, that the Middle East can actually start its own clinical trials, like you said, because we certainly have certain issues that are very particular to our genetic makeup. And this is fantastic. And I sincerely hope that you can expand it even more outside of the Middle East. But there are certain criteria you need, right? You need like really top cancer centers who can have standardized care. Why is it, for example, how important is it that you have clean data, right? And is that the reason why you haven't been able to open up maybe in other low middle income countries who have not yet, for example, perhaps reached the level of KHCC? Can you explain what are the foundational elements that are required for EORTC to join more deeply, like you are doing now with the Middle East, so that other listeners can understand more what are the criteria?
So data quality is a must. A clinical trial is meant to change practice. If you want to change practice, we need extremely robust data. So the quality is paramount. And when we do clinical trial, we implement quality assurance measures. Doing a clinical trial is not cheap. It's expensive. We need to have, again, all the processes in place, the quality assurance, and think about, for instance, the clinical trial we are opening currently in the Middle East. They are radiotherapy based. We have programs to make sure quality radiation oncology is delivered according to the most I would say latest standard. So we need to ensure that, and of course we wish we would expand as much as possible in all regions. But indeed, there are limitations that we can do, and that's why the partnership with the KHCC, which act as a hub for the EORTC in the region, if you will, helps us to deploy even further and to transfer the knowledge even further through the node that is now present at MECO. So I think this is always the challenge in expanding access to clinical trial while ensuring the data quality and also training, because doing clinical trial is not like doing routine practice. We need additional skills in terms of following a protocol, making sure things are documented properly, pharmacovigilance, safety reporting. So all this needs trained teams. And actually, we have met, particularly in the Middle East, extremely performant teams. And that's why we go there with a lot of, I would say, reassurance.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, quality is key. Like they say, rubbish data comes up with rubbish research, right?
Garbage in,
it has
garbage
to
out.
be clean, yes. Given the current climate of funding for research, what role do you see collaborations between academia, hospitals, industry, and regulators should play in ensuring independent research thrives and innovates?
Yes, that's a difficult question indeed. That's a challenge. Independent clinical research is supported by usually, of course, non-commercial money, so public money, foundation, charities, corporate social responsibility program, donors. But indeed, I think there is room to collaborate with more with government. For instance, when we do a de-escalation clinical trial where less treatment is going to be given, maybe there will be savings in the healthcare system. How can this stimulate actually independent clinical research? You know, we have seen, for instance, a clinical trial done in India where they have been giving much less of specific treatments and while achieving a very nice medical outcome. So, you know, this is still in the spirit of de-escalation. So I think to some extent, we have a little bit to re-engineer the process of development and access to treatment. And I think there are several aspects of development that we can revisit that could be potentially more patient-oriented, but that could have a benefit for society. And based on that, we potentially have the basis, the ground, to discuss new ways of funding. Of course, we rely a lot at the EORTC, for instance, and we benefit of European funding, of different rounds. But as you know, it's never enough, I would say.
Yes, yes. And, you know, the current climate, you know, you keep seeing all kinds of headlines of cuts directly to research on all aspects. And it's mind-boggling, especially when, you feel we're at the cusp of new innovations fighting cancer. And you think, why are they cutting research when this benefits all humanity? But I wanted to ask you something. I remember talking to you about government, where I'm not going to say the name, and you mentioned that, you know, I'm sure like many other governments, they are really almost, you know, they're getting overloaded with the cost of the new immunotherapy drugs. And somehow you were telling me something about EORTC trying to help those governments. What is it you're trying to do in that regard?
Yeah, so the fact is that oncology drugs specifically are extremely expensive. And I would say we are faced, luckily, with many new type of drugs, very, very active, which are going to change, of course, the life of cancer patients. But again, as we said earlier, are we sure we give these drugs optimally? And as we mentioned, it de-escalate. We know, and it's been documented by Denis, not only the EORTC, that there is an over-utilization of therapeutic modalities. And the discussion that we have engaged with several governments, with several agencies across Europe, is how we could partner in actually doing these trials for the patient first. This is our mission, again, to really continue any therapeutic progress while controlling toxicity, giving less toxicity to the patient, improving quality of life. But also, as you can, of course, realize, this has a major impact on health economics, on economics of treatment. So what we are looking at and what we are discussing currently is can we create new partnership with governments whereby stimulating and supporting this type of trial, they could have a return on investment by spending less, because less would be, I would say, less would be more. Less would be more because more patients would benefit of treatment, because once if you have €1, you can spend it only once, and less would be more because patients would have less toxicity, because treating toxicity costs to the healthcare system. So you save twice by less treatment and by also managing less toxicity. So I think that's the conversation we have engaged, based on which we are exploring what could be the solutions.
And you're getting positive feedback from these governments. They want to get involved in this?
So certainly the feedback is extremely positive. There is a lot of interest. The challenge is putting, of course, this in motion. There are not necessarily the mechanism within countries to save them on one side and support on the other side. So these are complex mechanisms at the level of the healthcare system, at the level of the payer, at the level of the health technology assessment to organize. So that's, I would say, national challenges. But for an organization like EORTC, when we do international clinical trial, would be that all countries would be ready to embark more or less at the same time. Because if one country is ready and not the others, we are never going to achieve the clinical trial in reasonable time. So we need several countries to be on the starting block, if I can say so. And this is not yet there. And we hope we are going to see that at some point in time.
Inshallah, as we say in Arabic, hopefully. Dr. Denis, what are the major milestones or priorities EORTC hopes to achieve in the next 5 years?
So I think in the next 5 years, and where our priorities are going to be, of course, there are several. I would say on the top is this pragmatic trial, de-escalation trial. Very important for the patient, but for the healthcare system. So that's one of them. The second one is rare cancers. We realize that patients with rare cancer lag beyond patients with frequent cancer in terms of therapeutic progress. So these rare cancer patients have, I would say, less life expectancy, which is shorter. We don't understand the biology necessarily of their tumors, so that is going to be a focus for the EORTC. Another important, I would say, pillar that we want to engage are older patients. Older patients, and that's where you would see actually typically de-escalation, where the duration of life may not necessarily be the most important, but quality of life. And that's of course, the patient population that does not get a lot of attention and where we want to give priority. I would say something where we are putting a lot of effort, and you mentioned that earlier, is working with patients. We are now addressing, for instance, patient preferences, patient experience data, how this is going to help us designing new trial, changing our methodology. How are we going to take this information from patient into our decision rules? So all this is methodological research that is going to be extremely important, based on which we are going to, of course, take decision in the future. I think something that I wanted to highlight is that EORTC is, of course, about clinical trial, but it is the how we do clinical trial. For instance, we have artificial intelligence, new solution for data science. We have new type of way of doing clinical trials. We've been mentioning earlier a little bit about pragmatic clinical trials, simpler clinical trial, but we have also the possibility today to have registries based on which we are going to learn on patients and maybe identify questions for their therapeutic progress, and we can plug the clinical trial in the registry. So all these are a multitude of new forms of clinical research that we don't know necessarily how to use optimally. So research on research methodology is going to be also very important to make sure, of course, we embrace all this.
Well, I mean, do you think AI is going to take over the scientists' work also?
No,
They're taking over every field.
I think we have to look into AI. I think it's going to be a game changer. But as in anything, there is good and there is less good. And I think the role and the wisdom of humankind is actually to know how to use, to understand the limit, and take the best of it.
Yes, yes. Well, Dr. Denis, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I'm so honored to be working with EORTC, opening up new frontiers, giving access to more patients starting in the Middle East and hopefully outside of the Middle East to give patients a chance to get more life-saving treatments. I look forward to seeing what lies ahead in the next 5 years. I know with your leadership, you're going to make waves. You make things happen. What are you doing this weekend? Don't tell me you're working all day. I know your wife complains a lot about that. Do you have something fun you want to do?
Tell you, last weekend was very busy because there was the largest conference in Europe, the European Society of Medical Oncology. We were 37,000 people in Berlin. So indeed, last weekend was very, very busy. So next weekend will be a little bit on the resting side, indeed.
Well, I hope you can relax. I'm sure there is, you need to, you've been working. Every time I talk to you, you're busy, actually. So I hope that this weekend you take some time off. Thank you again, Dr. Denis. I know my listeners enjoyed the conversation, learned a lot about the important work of EORTC, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much, Princess Dina, and I look forward also to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.